Batman versus Superman, again, tried very hard to have intricacy, and something that the Avengers could do, which they are starting to do in Civil War, because in Civil War, the whole initial thing is about, a public kind of perception of superheroes versus keeping them as private citizens. And you have Batman versus Superman, who's way beyond that, in my opinion. They are doing a dynamic of how the world sees Superman as God, and how Batman, is threatened by it. And at least DC's movies are trying to be deep. They're trying to kind of do the Dark Knight, but they're failing. And I think the biggest thing is they're putting too much at a time in each movie. We talked about Thor and Man of Steel and how there's a God dynamic. And Civil War is moving in that direction. They're finally putting a little bit of society into their movies. Because in all the Marvel movies, society is absent. There's a bunch of faceless, nameless people, and there are no consequences. In Man of Steel, from the beginning, there's always been consequences, and that's what Batman v Superman is completely based on.
But Man of Steel, I don't know. Maybe I can admit that I've never found Superman to be anything more than a hollow character.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the concept of Superman either.
The way he's always been portrayed, even in the cartoons as a kid, there never really seemed like there was room to grow that.
He's too dominant. He's too powerful right from the start.
But when you look at Man of Steel, hands down, especially in Batman vs. Superman, you see a movie, it's almost like an independent film, where you can tell the director his view of himself is a little bit too big, so he just tried way too hard thinking he could pull off that almost Hitchcockian moment.
Well, Zack Snyder is very...
but maybe like Tarantino-esque.
Well, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. He didn't even try to do dialogue
capture
on
that magic kind of thing with something simple, but...
Zack Snyder is very, very much about style. You can see that in 300. 300 is complete style. Great style, but only style. There's no development anywhere in that.
It's almost like Berkheim.
Yeah. So he's all about giving you cool visuals, but to be fair, he has improved quite a bit. He started doing a lot of depth in Watchmen, and then he's brought depth into Batman v Superman, but I think the biggest problem is the studio, because DC feels as though they need to compete with Marvel by creating Justice League, and rather than do what Marvel did and separate it into a bunch of different movies like they should have, they tried to just add in a bunch of parts in Batman v Superman to set up Justice League. And obviously that's going to hurt the movie. And the movie originally was like 3 hours long, and they cut it down, because obviously it's hard to sell a 3-hour-long movie. But I respect the fact that they are trying to do what The Dark Knight did. Marvel isn't trying to do that. Marvel's cashing in on general audience.
Well, I think the real telltale on which direction DC is going is going to be Suicide Squad. Because it's going to be a question of whether or not it's got that dark feel like The Dark Knight did in the Batman series. But the question is, do they go dark in that sense of we're going to continue to drive that very plot-thickening character depth perspective, or are they going to just take a dark twist at the same thing that Marvel's doing?
I think, unfortunately, they're probably going to come more towards Marvel. And that's because they got such a backlash from trying to push it in Batman v Superman. And that's what's upsetting me so much. Rather than getting upset, I liked Batman v Superman, but if you didn't like it, can you at least stand back and respect what they tried to do? because you're hurting the industry by pushing against Batman v Superman and saying the whole thing was stupid, everything about it was bad, which isn't true. And you guys know that's not true. Like, come on. No one hates every single part of the movie. You're going to like some things about it.
Overall, it was a good movie. The only problem is people like yourself and I are setting it against that bar set by Batman.
Yeah.
And when it falls short...
But that's the thing. Are they setting it against The Dark Knight, or are they setting it against the Avengers? I think they're setting it against the Avengers. I want people to set it against Dark Knight.
People like us are setting it against the Avengers, and that's why we're knocking it.
Yeah.
I'm not the Avengers, setting it against... You're fucking me up, man.
I think you're wrong. I think you're 100% wrong. I think if you're comparing it to The Dark Knight, you're a little disappointed, but you don't hate the movie because it tries to do similar things. If you're comparing it to The Avengers, it's nothing like The Avengers. You aren't going to like it. I think those are two very distinct differences. So how were you guys comparing it? Like, which movie were you feeling like it was comparing to, The Avengers or The Dark Knight? Because I think that made a big difference in expectations.
That's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah.
Man of Steel comes on. I enjoyed it when I watched it. I'm gonna keep clicking. Thor comes on. I'll watch it.
Yeah, I watched Man of Steel again
Don't get
over
me
Thor.
wrong.